ago, we've heard about a new expression in archaeology, Adam's calendar, in South Africa. And then we heard about the guy who continued his investigation of that particular site. Later on, we heard about a new expression, African megalithic circles. And then it turns out that there were not tens, hundreds, thousands, but many, many more. And then once we started researching the internet, we wrote a book before he started research on megalithic sites. Slave Species of God. The second book followed, and finally, a few years back, he decided to not improve the world, but to change it altogether. I'm really privileged to introduce you to our next speaker, one of the most attractive and most inspirational speakers in the world at this moment. And I'm sure that you will like what you're going to hear, because he's going to be bridging the ancient technologies with a world of the future based on very humane principles. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Tellinger.
To be introduced by somebody like Samir Osmanagic, who's charting a whole new direction for humanity himself, and the unveiling of ancient technology with the pyramid in Bosnia. Thank you, Samir, for the kind introduction. Okay, so we got a long presentation. I'm going to try and go through this at a pace. With respect to the translators, and try and keep it going, because I do want to finish today, unlike the other two presentations where we couldn't quite finish. So let's go through this. So I call this presentation Out of the Matrix and Into Unity. And I use that picture specifically because all of us have the greatness encoded in us. We are all co-creators of our own reality. We can create a positive future and a beautiful future, or we can create a miserable future for ourselves. It's up to us what we do with the information. So by the time we leave here today, I would like every one of us to have in our hearts encoded a positive, beautiful future of our planet for all of us, living in harmony, living in abundance, living in the most advanced technology that we cannot even imagine today, and living our lives in bliss, in joy, in harmony, the way we should be living it on this beautiful planet, completely away from the course or the path that we're on today. So for inspiration, we look at the ancient past. We look into the past like these guys on Easter Island do, and we look at the information and the clues that has been given to us by the ancient civilizations, and see what we can learn from the past so we can fix and improve on the mistakes that have been made, and find the reasons why the world is so bloody screwed up today. Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. This moment, right here, right now, what do we do from this moment forward? Nothing else really matters. So what we learn from the past is critical, how we use that information into the future and for the benefit of all of humanity, not just single individuals, not for corporations, not for companies, not for governments, and not for greedy politicians. So our journey of discovery today starts in 1898, when the British Empire, the world's largest empire in the history of this planet, the British Empire mobilized the most expensive war in its history. It remains the most expensive war in its history, when they launched what became known as the South African War between 1899 and 1902, when the British Empire sent 470,000 troops to fight 60,000 farmers, otherwise known as Boers, farmers. Boer or boer means farmer in Afrikaans. And another about 60,000 native Africans. And the question you've got to ask yourself, why? Why did the British Empire send 470,000 soldiers all the way from Great Britain to the southern tip of Africa? What would be such a critical reason? And the answers are far more mysterious than most of us could imagine. Remember, this is twice as many soldiers as there are in the Gulf War today. So just put that into context. More than 100 years ago, this happened. This was all prepared by this man here, Cecil John Rhodes, who was probably the most powerful individual on planet Earth at that stage. And he paved the ground, prepared the foundation for this onslaught against the people of Southern Africa. And it was always about the gold. Do not fool yourself. We cannot escape that. It was about securing the gold and the future delivery of the minerals, especially the gold, for the crown. When I say the crown, I don't mean the Queen. I mean the Crown Temple, that very sacred, secret place in the center of London, the city of London, where the control of global money is orchestrated from. The Crown Temple in the city of London, which is one of the 3 independent states inside other countries, like the City of London, the Vatican City, and Washington, D.C., which are the 3 independent states within other countries that pretty much control our lives. That's what this aggression against the people of Southern Africa was all about. And this is where we meet Paul Kruger, and we find the Paul Kruger story. Most people know Paul Kruger as the man who created the Kruger Park, where all the animals are kept today in South Africa, and also for the Kruger Rand or Kruger Gold. And it's fascinating because Paul Kruger at the time was the president of the Transvaal Boer Republic, one of the 2 republics there, as you can see, Transvaal Republic and the Republic of Orange Free State. And these were the 2 republics that were resisting the British Empire. They did not want to give up. And so the British Empire were losing this battle against these 2 little Boer republics, and 60,000 farmers on horseback fighting well-equipped British Empire soldiers with everything you can imagine in support. And they were losing against these farmers until they implemented what became known as the scorched earth policy, where they burned down the farms, they killed all the animals, and they took the women and children and they put them in concentration camps. Yes, it is the British in South Africa in the year 1899 that discovered and invented the concentration camps. It wasn't the Nazis in the Second World War. And there were about 45 concentration camps scattered around South Africa, and about 35,000 Boer farmers' wives and children died in these concentration camps under the hands of the British, torture and pretty much just starved them to death. And a further unknown number of black South Africans died in these concentration camps at the hand of the British invaders. There was a very important battle that took place on the 26th of January 1900, which became known as the Battle of Spionkop. That is Spionkop over there, that little mountain over there. It's a little bit bigger than it looks there, but the reason this day was so important because it became known as the bloodiest battle in any war since then, where more men died in a hectare of land than in any other war since then, even the First World War. And there were also 3 world leaders that were on the same mountain the same day, and if any one of those world leaders would have gotten a bullet that day, the whole future and the history as we know it today would have changed dramatically. The first one of those world leaders on that mountain was Winston Churchill. He was a news correspondent for the British media, and he then also was captured by the Boer army, and then he managed to escape the bastard. I wish they'd kept him. Maybe our history would have looked very different in all of Europe if Winston Churchill didn't get involved in the wars after that. And then he became known as the Brit who got away by the Boer army. The second global leader that was on that same mountain the same day, if he'd caught a bullet, would have changed world history even more dramatically, was a young Mahatma Gandhi. He was a stretcher bearer for the British troops. You can imagine what Asia and India would have looked like if he was shot on that particular day. And then finally, and probably most unexpectedly, was General Louis Botha, who was the general of the Boer army. He was there that same day, obviously. Now, the reason I bring him up is because 8 years after surrendering to the British Empire, in 1910, he became the first Prime Minister of the Union of South Africa. So he chose to stop fighting and basically go peacefully into the future. And this prepared a whole new future and a foundation for what was planned by the British Empire. Another very important historic event happened on the 4th of June 1900, when a train filled with gold left Pretoria, the capital of the Transvaal Republic, and headed for Mozambique. There's Pretoria there, and it headed from there over there to Maputo, the capital of Mozambique. And that's about a 600-kilometer ride. And that train was said to have been filled with between 30 tons to 3,000 tons of gold. There are various speculation on the amount of gold that was on this train. The interesting thing is that just some of the gold coins that were on that train would have been these very rare veldponde, as they are known, veldpond. Today, one of these veldponde is worth $90,000, just one of them. And this was a train full of gold, full of these veldponde that was heading out to Mozambique. The train took a route towards the coast, and it went through various towns. Some of these towns that it went through was Belfast, Machadodorp, Watervalboven, which is the town that I live in today, and then Waterval onder. Watervalboven means waterfall above, Waterval onder means waterfall below. And when the train got to the town of Machadodorp, it went missing and was never seen again. This train filled with gold. And this has led to one of the greatest treasure stories and treasure hunter mysteries in the world today. Every year, hundreds of people come out to our part of the world looking for Paul Kruger's train and looking for Paul Kruger's millions, which today would be billions, if not trillions. And every now and then, when I walk through the mountains looking at the stone ruins, I come across a big hole in the ground. And you think, why is there a hole in the middle of the mountain? Nowhere, nothing in sight. And you go, ah, Paul Kruger's millions. And you realize that somebody's been there looking for the money. Well, the mysterious thing about this is that in the year 1900, the gold production of South Africa wasn't that big yet, because the gold in the reef, on the Rand Reef area, Johannesburg, was only discovered in 1896. So by the year 1900, the gold production was mostly coming from the eastern part of South Africa, where I live today, where a number of small mines really started to come into production in the South African gold rush that started in 1864. And these were relatively small gold mines, nothing compared to today's gold mines. The South African gold rush started at the same time as the Californian and the Australian gold rush. That's another very interesting thing to contemplate. And the town in which it started was a town called Kaapsehoop, when a 5.2 kilogram gold nugget was discovered. Well, the fascinating thing about Kaapsehoop is this also happens to be the town where Adam's calendar is found. And Adam's calendar is associated with the Anunnaki and the mining of gold and the creation of humanity. And it's fascinating that this is a view from Kaapsehoop, from the lookout point over the valley below, which is a kilometer below. And that's where you see many of the ancient gold mines lie buried there under sea sand. But there's still one ancient gold mine there that was reopened, I believe, during the gold rush, and that is Sheba Gold Mine. And I wonder, when they called it Sheba Gold Mine, how did they know to call it Sheba Gold Mine, right? So how did they decide to call it Sheba Gold Mine? And just 4 kilometers in that direction, along that same ridge, looking out the same way, lies Adam's calendar, looking out at what would have been a vast number of ancient gold mines. So the question we should ask is not what happened to the train and the gold, because most people get stuck on the gold. Where's the Paul Kruger gold? Where's the Paul Kruger train? Where did it disappear to? Is it buried beneath the ground somewhere? Everyone's looking for the train. That's not the question we should be asking. The question we should be asking is, where did Paul Kruger get all the gold from to fill a whole train? Because it wasn't just one carriage. It was apparently a whole train, a number of carriages filled with gold. Where did he get all the gold from? And this becomes the question that leads to the reason why the British Empire led such a huge onslaught about this one man, because he did not know what was really going on. This also brings us to gold as the common link to all of human history. We cannot separate our history and ourselves from our obsession with gold. But remember, it's not our obsession with gold. We inherited this obsession from the gods. Whenever the European thugs, when the thugs from Europe started invading the free world 500 years ago, in the late 1400s, invading the native people of the world and taking their land, whenever they came across these ancient cultures, they found that they had huge amounts of gold. And whenever they asked them, who does this gold belong to, they always got a standard answer. The gold belongs to the gods. It wasn't their gold. But the Europeans thought that was a great idea. These people are just stupid. They think it's not their gold, so we'll just take it. So this is how it all, just the thieving started from the New World by the Spaniards and the Portuguese and the British as they started invading the free world and creating the whole Eurocentric world that we find today. So if Africa is the cradle of humankind, is it possible that we can find the origins of gold mining in Africa, and specifically southern Africa, because that's where a lot of the gold seems to be coming from? And the answer is absolutely. Just around the little town of Leidenburg, which is famous for these very strange looking ceramic heads. They're known as the Leidenburg heads, and they're very, very precious. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, each one of these. Just around the town of Leidenburg, a geological survey was performed between 2005 and 2010. And I was told by a geologist in the town of Nelspruit that was part of this geological survey that within the first 5 years, they counted 75,000 gold mines, these small added gold mines going into the sides of mountains, 75,000 of these. And this just tells us how much activity there was going on. The reason why these gold mines are still visible is because they go into the sides of the mountains. They're not going down into the ground. All the gold mines that were going down the shafts are covered by sand, covered by sea sand. This we find all over that part of the world. Sea sand with seashells and fossilized fish that we've been finding on tops of mountains, in the stone circles, at Adam's Calendar, in the valley below Adam's Calendar. At least 30 meters of sea sand, sediment that is lying across that whole valley. So this thing's got its own mind suddenly. Furthermore, mysterious tunnels were found in the 30s. On at least 2 occasions, I've been told, that gold miners in the 1930s, at about 100 feet or 33 meters, suddenly came across these mysterious tunnels that looked something like this. They were mysterious tunnels with tools and artifacts that they couldn't understand. And clearly somebody was mining there long before them. Also in the northern part of South Africa, just south of Zimbabwe, in the Volkberg mountain, there are dozens and dozens of kilometers of underground ancient mining tunnels that look something like this. And nobody's aware of this. They were mining gold there, and they left behind what was described to me by the people that have found these tunnels as platinum slag. So they were not interested in the gold, in the platinum, they were only interested in the gold. De Beers, the diamond mining company, in the 1990s found a mine shaft 22,000 feet deep. What is that? That's about 7,000 meters? 7,000 meters deep. A mine shaft cut with absolute precision, with technology that they do not possess today, some sort of laser technology. The same company, De Beers and Anglo-American, are today the same company. Anglo-American bought out De Beers. Anglo-American has a secret file at the head office that they keep of ancient mines that they discover. And I was told this by the chief geologists for Anglo-American at a pub over a beer, believe it or not. He just volunteered this information to me. I asked him, do you ever find ancient mine shafts and mine tunnels? And he said, yeah, we find them all the time. I went, wow. He said, we just found one recently near Bloemfontein, the capital of the Orange Free State. And I said, wow, so what did you find? And he said, well, it was about 500 meters deep and there were some bone remains at the bottom. I said, so what, did you research it? What did you do? And he said, no, we just cover it up and we move on. And we put the information in the file in the head office. We're not allowed to touch it. That's what he was told to do. So you can imagine how much information on ancient mines lies at the head office of Anglo-American. Most recently in 2014, in November, December 2014, in one of the new modern mines in South Africa that looks something like this, one of the sides caved in and exposed to the side, to the bottom, an ancient tunnel that was carved with absolute precision. When the miners went in there, they were astounded. They couldn't believe this ancient tunnel that was absolutely perfectly carved. And when they reported it, that part of the mine was immediately closed down. They never carried on working there. Everybody was moved out, and that part of the mine was shut down. So this is how they conceal this ancient information. In northeast Zimbabwe, and known as the Nyanga province, there are thousands of these slave pits. They call them slave pits because our historians and our archaeologists suggest that slaves were kept in these, because obviously if you put a slave in there, there's no way they're going to get out. Or you put animals in there. So there were either slave pits or animal pits or grain pits. Now, any intelligent human being would say, really? You're going to put grain in there, or just so it gets rotten? Or you're going to try and make beer? Are you going to put animals in there? What, you're going to put them in with ropes and pulleys? What's going on here? But this is what they put in our history books, and it stays there, unfortunately. But fortunately, we have a very clever geologist at the Zimbabwe University by the name of Anne Kritzinger, and she started researching these slave pits, and she found that they had inlet valves and outlet valves at the bottom of the sides, one slightly higher than the other. And she found at the outlet valves up to 2 grams per ton of gold sediment. And there's only one conclusion that you can reach from that, is that these pits were somehow used for a purification and the processing of gold. Nothing else would be happening there if you've got such a high concentration of gold in the outlet valves. In a sinkhole in a town called Carltonville, these are sinkholes that appear. Some are very large, some are like a few hundred meters in diameter, and some are very small. And they just appear out of the blue in the mining areas where I was growing up. And around 1975, the guy that told me the story couldn't remember the exact year, so he said it was around 1975. Him and his team were testing their equipment for a mine rescue team, and they went down one of the sides of these sinkholes, and when they got to the bottom, they found one of the sides was caved in. So they cleared it out, and they found, into the darkness, they found a tunnel. He described a paved tunnel. It was paved all the way around. And it wasn't beautifully backlit like this one. It would have been very dark and scary. But they walked into the dark and scary tunnel several meters, from what he explained to me, about 30 meters, which in a dark and scary tunnel is quite deep. And suddenly, in the darkness, they stumbled upon one of these statues looking at them. A pre-Inca kind of deity, Viracocha-looking kind of statue in a mine tunnel below the town of Carlsonburg. And this just shows us how ancient civilizations shared information and shared knowledge, and how you can see the fingerprints of these ancient civilizations all over the world, and it's all connected to gold. Somehow we cannot escape this gold quest. And this also tells us that our history is much older and much stranger and much more exciting than most of us could ever imagine. It's like we live in our own sci-fi adventure, right? This is it. So anything you can imagine has probably happened here, and if it hasn't yet, we're going to make it happen probably if we carry on like this. So it is much, much older, and the ancient sites are actually much older than we can imagine. And Stonehenge is actually, believe it or not, the best and the simplest example to show how old these ancient sites are. And there are simple signs that have been missed by historians, missed by archaeologists, missed by scientists, missed by geologists, and I couldn't believe it when I first went to Stonehenge, that everybody has missed this simple evidence screaming at us. The geology, the erosion of stones at Stonehenge. First of all, that stone there used to stand upright, and it used to be next to that one there, and they were connected along the top. Okay, so just remember that. So that one fell and broke in half. Now, the most important thing that you need to know is that Stonehenge underwent a complete reconstruction in 1954. Most people are unaware of this. If you go onto YouTube and the internet, you'll find hundreds of photographs of reconstruction of Stonehenge in 1954. It did not look like it looks today before 1954. There were a lot of stones there, but most of them were buried. They were buried by soil. They were lifted up and they were put into place where they thought they belonged. Okay? They're not necessarily where they belong because they were put there by the engineers in 1954. Now, if you look at the erosion, can you see the erosion? These stones around it, all these stones around it. If you look at other ancient sites with megalithic blocks from Egypt to the Incas, they're perfectly cut and they've got sharp edges. At Baalbek, wherever you go, they've got beautiful sharp edges. They're not rounded and eroded like this. And specifically, the erosion on that stone there, that one that's lying there, that fell over and broke. That erosion there is about 50 centimeters. Now, 50 centimeters of erosion on sarsen stone, one of the hardest stones known to mankind. 50 centimeters of erosion in a few thousand years? What drugs are you taking? Really? Any geologist, anyone that works with stone, will tell you that this is just not possible. That's why I say, not in a million years. That's the erosion that you find. On a clean break, that's not a few thousand years old, people. That's very, very old. Not in a million years will it erode like that. And therein lies your answer. How old is Stonehenge? Not in a million years. It's probably older than a million years. And that just deepens the mystery. And the ancient texts that we read deepen the mystery even more. Because the most important ancient text that sold more copies than any other ancient text in the history of this planet, known as the Bible, has maliciously been manipulated. The opening phrase of the Bible is not what we think or what we have been told it is. This guy here, Michal Ledwith, who's become a good friend of mine, was the advisor to the two popes, or to the popes, to both of these guys, at the Vatican for 17 years. He's a walking encyclopedia. You can discuss anything with Michal. He's an Irishman, and he's just really a wealth of knowledge and information about any ancient civilization, anything you can choose to discuss with him. Well, in the 60s, while he was studying at one of the universities, he realized that the opening Hebrew phrase of the Bible is misrepresented. Every sacred text in Hebrew has to start with the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. That's how it works. It has to start with the letter Aleph and not with any other letter. And he found that what we believe the opening phrase to be is not so. We all believe, or we all read that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's what we read in the Bible today. But that's not what it's originally supposed to read. The Hebrew phrase says, Ba Rashit bara Elohim et ha Shemaim wa et ha Yaris, which doesn't even make grammatical sense. It's incomplete, it's nonsensical, because it's only when you add the Aleph, the A in front of Ba, suddenly it says Abba, which is Father. That is the beginnings. So it goes, the Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth. And that changes everything, people. It not only changes and connects Christianity and Judaism to all other ancient cultures, but it also tells us how far these guys, these global elite that are trying to control humanity, how far they will go to achieve their plan. By manipulating the opening phrase of the Bible and pulling the wool over millions of people's eyes and creating religious deception and religious elitism by manipulating the sacred texts. This is spectacular. So this is what it actually reads. The Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth. Now suddenly we realize that the Elohim are a group of beings or entities that were created like everything else by the Father of the beginnings. And we realize that Christianity suddenly joins all other ancient cultures, and we get this thing, sound and resonance, that become the common links of religion and creation. Remember, God said, let there be light. It was the sound of the Creator that brought forth the light and everything else. Sound and resonance first. In Christianity, we have the word. Hinduism, we have the Om. Egyptians sang the world or the universe into creation. The Aboriginal creation story talks about being created with sacred songs. Everything was brought into creation with sacred songs. And the Hindu creation story is pretty much like the opening phrase of the Bible. It says, everything was so peaceful and silent that Vishnu slept undisturbed by dreams or motion. From the depths a humming sound began to tremble. It grew and spread, filling the emptiness and throbbing with energy. The night had ended. Vishnu awoke. It's just a far more dramatic version of God said, let there be light. So what is sound? Well, sound is the source of all creation. All ancient cultures tell us this. Sound is the breath of the Creator. Sound and resonance. Sound levitates, it boils water, it creates light, it creates DNA. Sound heals and destroys pathogens. Sound moves beyond the speed of light. Sound behaves as hypersound, one of the best kept secrets in science and physics. Sound can be turned into Caesar beams as laser beams. Sound makes things invisible. Sound energizes the water we drink and the air we breathe, without which it would be dead and we would not survive. Sound can create hurricanes and rain, and so it goes. Because sound is the source of all things, we can do everything and anything imaginable with sound and resonance. And just to remind you, many of you will be familiar with this, the basic principles of sound and cymatics, the study of sound and manifestation into physical form. Remember that every sound frequency has its own very specific shape, and one of the best ways to introduce people to it is with these very simple examples of sound of sand or rice on a metal plate and putting sound frequencies through it. Every frequency has its own special shape. The higher the frequency, the more complex the shape. The lower the frequency, the more basic the shape. And it goes into unimaginable. It never stops. It never, just because we can't hear it doesn't mean it stops. Okay, so just to remind you of this, no matter how many times you see this, it remains beautiful to see, because you suddenly see this thing that you can't touch, sound, suddenly materialize into physical form and shapes. And you can realize how powerful our voices are when we speak. Can we have the sound, please? As the frequency goes higher, the shapes become more and more complex. This is rice on a metal plate, not sand, by the way. Now remember, you're also watching a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional effect. So imagine it's actually going above and below. Sound is a bubble, and a bubble that seems to expand in all directions as it moves. So it's a very complex thing for us to actually understand. Now we're getting to the very high frequencies in our audio perception, around 16,000 hertz, where most of us stop hearing. Just because you can't hear it doesn't mean it's going to stop. Alright, and then we get to the cymoscope. Now that takes this a little bit further. Cymoscope was invented by Eric Larson, who works in a research laboratory, or used to until recently, in Oregon, United States. I had the pleasure of meeting with him last year. And Eric developed the cymoscope, which actually shows us the power of the human voice and how our human voice has infinite capacity to create. We create so much. Remember, every one of these frequencies that you see being manifested, there is energy. So you're creating energy. You're creating something. We're constantly giving birth and creating something. We're creating those shapes and creating things, but we just don't think of it like that. So as you speak, we have infinite capacity to create. And the cymoscope shows us how with our voice we can do exactly that. And how wizards could manifest physical things by speaking, and with their wands, by casting spells. Spelling at school, when we spell, remember? You do your spelling exercises, learning how to cast spells. Except we don't do that. This is all encoded into this language that is used to manipulate us. But this is just an example of the cymoscope. Brilliant discovery. And when you drill into one of the photographs of the cymoscope, guess what you find? This beautiful cross in a circle, where you see the sacred geometric lines coming from the circle right into the center, this seems to be the source of the sound. And suddenly you realize where ancient religions got their ideas for their logos. The cross in a circle. And it wasn't designed by an ad agency or somebody who got inspired. They used that because they know what the source of creation is. Sound, the sound of the Creator. They all have it encoded in their logos. Even the medicine wheel in Native American culture is a cross in a circle because the Native medicine men know that sound can heal and sound can cure anything. The original people of Australia have a phenomenal creation story that describes how the surface of the earth was created. And once again, we can demonstrate that with cymatic principles and observing what happens to the surface of the earth if you expose it to a vibration. So, and how the soil and the rocks and everything is distributed and manifested. So, the original people tell us that time began when the supernatural beings awoke and broke through the surface of the earth. So imagine sand on a metal plate. They moved about the earth, bringing into being the physical features of the landscapes. And they did this with 3 sacred songs. I mean, this is just spectacular. You know, where did they know this from? They've known this for a long time. And this is the beautiful work of Hans Jenny. You can watch the whole documentary on YouTube. It's available for free. And you'll see a lot more than just this. But this is just an example. What you're going to see here is a fine powder. It's not a jelly or a liquid. It is a powder called lycopodium powder. Very, very fine powder. But see how it behaves? Imagine that this is the surface of the earth. And we know that the earth has a resonance. It has a frequency. And how that frequency will manifest itself on the surface of the earth, like the surface of the metal plate.
Circular shapes appear, but these are in a state of continuous upheaval. The particles are pushed outwards from the center.
Can you imagine mountains forming and valleys forming?
And at the same time, they pulsate.
Except over millions of years. Remember, it's a powder, not a jelly.
We can recognize the various patterns of the vibratory fields. They move to and fro, unite, and separate again according to the vibratory state of the surface formed by the membrane. We can, as it were, move over a landscape which is in a state of vibration. If we intensify the note, we produce a crescendo for the ear, the masses are hurled outwards. We see fountains, eruptions, explosions almost. But invariably, the particles return to the center. So that here again, even under these violently dynamic conditions, we find there is circulation.
You get the idea. This is a photograph I took from a light aircraft flying over Australia just recently, just to show you what it looks like from the air, and you start imagining the surface of the earth being formed in the same kind of way. When you watch the documentary, you'll see a lot more of this, and it'll really make you understand a lot deeper if you haven't seen it yet. And this brings us to sound as a tool and technology, because if the sound is the source of creation, then surely we can use it as a tool and technology. And the Egyptians did exactly that. They used sound for all kinds of things. And the Ankh seems to be the center of the Egyptian pharaohs and the royalty. And notice that each one always carried his own Ankh. There, this one, that one's got his own Ankh. They didn't share their unks like we don't share our toothbrushes, because each unk is calibrated to your body, to the energy of your body, and that's how you can use it as a tool. So even if we had to pick up a real, genuine unk from ancient times, we would pick it up, it probably wouldn't work. We wouldn't know how to use it, because it's not calibrated to our body. They healed with it, they levitated with it, they did all kinds of things with the unks that we only can imagine today. The Ark of the Covenant is probably the most famous tool or advanced technology, because the Ark was clearly a communication device, and it also a levitation device. Remember the Ark, first of all, Moses was told that he must sit between the cherubim, on top of the Ark, under the wings, and that God would speak to him when he sat there and tell him what to tell the Israelites. So that very clearly tells us it was a communication device. It was definitely not to be carried, because those poles to carry it were just ornamental. They were probably antennae, because the Ark would have weighed at least between 1.5 and 3 tons with all the gold. So 4 guys would not have carried it. It's not possible. And the Bible tells us that the Ark always hovered above the ground. It never touched the ground. So it always levitated. So it was pushed along. So it was a levitation device, it was a communication device, and it was also a device that defeated large armies. It killed thousands of people, armies, and it brought down the walls of Jericho. So this is one little box made with very special instructions. There was a very powerful tool and a weapon of mass destruction. So when the United States invaded Iraq, looking for weapons of mass destruction, which they didn't find, I suggest that they were not looking for weapons of mass destruction that we think of today. They were actually looking for weapons of mass destruction of ancient civilizations. And if you think I'm just making that up, I'm not joking about this. Because some of you may be aware of the fact that within 48 hours of the first bombs landing on Baghdad, the Baghdad Museum was raided. All the stuff in the museum was taken out and removed, and it was made to look like vandals got in there. They left some, unimportant objects and artifacts lying around to look like it was vandalized, but they got everything out of the vaults, because that's what they were after. There's a long discussion to be had there. The reason I'm so confident about that is because I know how powerful the tools and the artifacts are that I've been collecting in the stone circles and in the stone ruins of South Africa. John Keely in 1888 was already levitating with sound and drilling holes, precision holes with sound into rock and all kinds of other materials, and crushing giant, several tons of stone into a very fine powder with sound frequencies within minutes. Today, we don't have that technology. The mines take a lot of time and effort to crush the ore that they get out of the ground into a fine powder so they can extract the minerals out of it. John Keely was doing all this with sound with relative ease. Sound creates light. You can go and do this experiment for yourself. Sound levitates. Now, this is an experiment done by David Deek, but this is not how the ancients used to levitate stuff. They used Caesar technology. They used vortex fields. Vortex fields where sound is spiraled into a Caesar beam or hypersound. The fields around it distort gravity. That's how they used it in ancient times. This is just to show you, to let you imagine that sound can actually levitate objects. But this is just very light objects trapped between 2 sound waves that create pressure waves. So this is how they can manipulate very light objects to be levitated. This is quite loud on the ears. I had a discussion with David Deek. He lives in Long Island, New York, and he told me that he was amazed at how sensitive this was. The smallest change in frequency, and he could make those polystyrene items do all kinds of things. Make it rotate, or bounce up and down, or spin, or anything. you got the idea. This guy here, Peter Davey, one of my favorites, he died a few years ago at the age of 94. He was boiling water with sound since 1940. Now, this is instant, boiling water with sound, instantly. Now, what is fascinating about this story is that in the early days, his device that looked something like this, this was already a device that was converted into an electric device. But the first devices he made were apparently made from bicycle bells. A smaller bicycle bell inside a bigger bicycle bell, something like this. And then when he rang the bell, it created the frequencies that boiled the water. So this is it. Honey, we got no more hot water. Don't worry. Dring, dring. Okay, you can shower now. That's the kind of technology I want in my house. And you know what this technology will do? It'll put all the coal mining industry out of work overnight. You can imagine. No more coal mining, no more polluting our world, no more destroying our planet, because we can boil water with sound. Even if we have to sit there and ring bells, you know, I'd rather do that than mine for coal. So, because remember now, we mine coal, so we can burn the coal, so the coal can boil the water, so the steam can drive the turbines. That's insane. So if we can boil the water with sound and create the steam, we've got clean electricity. That's like a first immediate step towards getting clean electricity. So one of the things I will do when I become president is... That was a joke, sorry, that was a joke. One of the things I will do when we start getting to setting up these laboratories and research facilities is just make sure, or the thing that I keep asking the research scientists out there is find the frequency that boils water. Because with that, we will liberate the world. Every country can suddenly have free electricity. But just be careful, because remember, our bodies are made up of 70 to 90% of water. So be careful where you point your device. Otherwise, your body will just explode. So suddenly, we're not only boiling water, but we're creating weapons of mass destruction. And this is how interesting it becomes when you start dealing with this advanced technology. Royal Raymond Drive, the man who found the cure for all disease in 1931, was removed from our psyche, all with prime resonance. Everything has a prime resonance frequency. If you know how the frequency of a virus or a bacterium or a cancer cell, you can either make it grow bigger or you can destroy it. Prime resonance frequency. And that's what he did. I found his book, Royal Raymond Drive, handwritten book that contains, I didn't count the number of pages, but I guess probably 800 pages of handwritten frequencies for each and every problem that you can imagine. I just photographed some pages. This is for all the different cancers, all the treatment for the cancers. This is treatment for diphtheria. This is a treatment for tuberculosis, and so it goes. So this book exists. This is in a library in Sedona, Arizona, that an amazing guy that I met has all these rare books in his collection. So they exist. But very recently, a music professor from Skidmore College University in the USA discovered in the music department that certain frequencies destroy cancer cells. So they started researching this with the medical department at the university, and they found the frequencies that kill and destroy cancer cells without touching anything else. He thinks they found something new. What's fascinating about that is that he didn't even know about Royal Raymond Drive and others like him. And so this is just a little excerpt from his TED Talk. You can see this on YouTube as well. This is a TED Talk that he did in 2011. And since then, we'd expect that this information would be out there for everyone to see, that pharmaceutical companies would be putting out the frequencies to cure cancer. But no, all of it has been suppressed, like it has always been done before. You might want to turn up this a little bit, the sound a little bit.
These are the first videos.
Can you turn that up a bit, please?
We showed these videos to our friends in the biology department. They said they hadn't seen anything quite like it. Seems to be a new phenomenon.
Can you turn that up a bit, please?
These organisms are being shattered by our electronic signals. This is a harmless organism, almost friendly, a little blepharisma. And normally they're very fast swimmers, but when you approach a frequency to which they are vulnerable, they begin to slow down, then they stop, and then they begin to disintegrate within about 3 minutes. So first we attack pancreatic cancer. Take a good look at this slide, because the next one will look quite different. After we treat these cells, they change their shape and size, and they begin to grow long, rope-like structures out the sides. They look something like antennas. I call them bioantennas for biological antennas. It's as if the cancer cells are trying to tune into our signal. We now know that cancer is vulnerable between the frequencies of 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz. So now we attack leukemia cells. Leukemia cell number 1 tries to grow a copy of itself, but the new cell is shattered into dozens of fragments and scattered across the slide. Leukemia cell number 2 then hyperinflates and also dies. Leukemia cell number 3 then tries to make another cancer cell. The new cell is shattered and the original cell dies. Now we attack ovarian cancer cells. This is a more distant shot. Here you see brackets coming up around the cells, showing groups of ovarian cancer cells which are being destroyed. You can see by the end of the video that a great many ovarian cancer cells were destroyed.
A magnetron that you find in laser beams, in microwaves, and other technology. Magnetron is run on the principles of resonance. Look, resonant cavity magnetron. High power, high frequency oscillator. Resonant cavity. Some laser beams are harmless, like this here, and some laser beams cut metal in a split second. This is how powerful magnetrons are, and all works on resonance. And just more than a year ago, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory announced that sound acts as a cloak of invisibility, and they published a whole paper on it. They also published in an associated article the fact that a 3D pyramid, or this weird plastic pyramid that looks like this, acts as a 3D acoustic cloak or a coat, and it makes things that you put underneath it, it makes it invisible. Look at the structure of this pyramid, it's very interesting, because it resembles very closely Eastern architecture, where monks live in monasteries. And is it possible that this is exactly why you have this kind of architecture? It's just a defense mechanism. What do monks do in monasteries? They get together and they chant. They hum. They make a sound. Oh. So maybe they just, instead of going to war and confronting the attackers, they get together and they chant and they make themselves disappear. And their enemies just go right past them. There's nothing here. Let's move on. It's a great defense mechanism if you ask me. And then I discovered, one of the most amazing discoveries I made recently is, again, through studying sound and looking for perpetual motion energy, I met a guy called Christian Lange in Germany, a scientist, who made me realize that it's actually the air, the sound of the air that we breathe that energizes the oxygen. Because by the time the sound, as we breathe the air, remember it goes from your throat, your trachea, then your bronchus, your bronchi, your bronchioli, and then the alveoli by the time, so that the air moves and it makes a sound. And when you breathe, we don't realize that we make a hell of a noise when we breathe, right? But it's that sound that actually moves and it speeds up as it goes into your lungs. By the time the air reaches your alveoli, the sound is moving beyond the speed of light. This is the great thing. It is moving at hypersound speeds, at extreme energies that it's giving off, the sound of the air you breathe. So it is that energizes the oxygen. Then the oxygen goes from your lungs into your bloodstream, and it is stripped of its energy in the cells, and then it's expelled as oxygen. We don't use the oxygen. The oxygen is the carrier of the energy. So it's the sound that energizes the oxygen. I spent 5 years at medical school studying pharmaceutics. Not once do they teach you any of this, because it's not what they want to let you know. So you have to discover this by accident when you're looking for free energy 30 years later. So the sound thing is so critical in our lungs. Look at there's your bronchi, your bronchus, and then eventually the alveoli that are hexagonal structures. Pay attention to this. Hexagonal structures like honeycomb. Now this is very important in understanding what the ancients were doing with some of the ancient sites. Furthermore, sound creates hurricanes. Here's a patent application from 2003 of, I think there are 2 guys, I should put their name up here, that got a patent application for making tornadoes. And this is one of the drawings that accompanies their application. And it's just amazing. And they explain exactly how to create tornadoes, how to control them, how to make them move. So it makes you suddenly realize, okay, Hurricane Katrina and all these hurricanes that we see appear all over the world that cause destruction. Are they natural or are they actually being created by somebody? Sound creates supercluster galaxies. In 2003, NASA exposed that sound waves 57 octaves lower than middle C are rumbling away from a super massive black hole in the Perseus supercluster of galaxies, which is about 250 million light years away from Earth, which is just down the road from us, really. So sound coming out of the super massive supercluster is creating all these galaxies. And the amazing thing is that they measured that frequency as being B flat in music terms. B flat. Now that brings in a lot of very important considerations on a spiritual and a consciousness level. If A is the point of departure, B flat is the next semitone up from A. Steps out of the source into manifestation, into creation. I'm just leaving that as an idea with you. Okay? And play with it, because you never know where it takes you. So it is a frequency over 1 billion times deeper than the limits of human hearing, and it's the deepest note ever detected from an object in the universe. What they're telling us, that they've detected many other notes from objects in the universe by telling us something like this. So they know this, but they don't always share it with us. And guess what it looks like when you take a picture of it? It looks just like that lycopodium powder on a metal plate, bringing into shape the features of the earth, the mountains. This looks just like that lycopodium powder, but just much, 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 much bigger. Remember, the lower the frequency, the bigger the cymatic patterns. This is 1 billion times lower frequency, 1 billion times bigger cymatic patterns. It's just so beautiful when you start seeing how this all fits together. But for me, one of the most impressive discoveries and achievements with sound was in 2011 when Dr. Luc Montagnier spontaneously manifested DNA in a tube of water exposed to sound. Remember, no DNA, DNA. No DNA. What does DNA contain? DNA contains all the instructions and the information about our body. Where does that come from? So you've got no DNA and suddenly you've got DNA. That DNA has got all the stuff encoded. So you can start seeing that the frequency that manifests the DNA must have billions and trillions of sub-frequencies and harmonics within it to manifest the DNA. And this is really where we start understanding the power and the magnificence that we have in our bodies, in the DNA that is encoded in us. We have the God gene in us. We can create anything we want. Quantum physics has shown us already that we are the creators of our own reality. We have the tools to do it. So let's start manifesting that reality for ourselves. Sound is therefore also the ultimate source of free energy, and will be providing that for us in the near future. The earth rings like a bell. We all know this by now, and so did Nikola Tesla. And this is what I believe he used to create his free radiant energy that could be used anywhere around the world. Not electricity, energy, radiant energy that doesn't kill you when you touch it. So what does this all have to do with ancient civilizations? Everything. Because we can now see that they understood sound and resonance, and they used it as a tool in very special ways. But that brings us to the three holy cows of our education system, and where most of us normally stop because we can't get out of the box. And this box, the three holy cows, is that humans evolved out of apes. Nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, and energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be converted from one form to another. All those three have been found to be completely incorrect and have been shown to be a lie. First of all, the theory of evolution remains a theory. No evidence for human evolution has ever been proposed. In fact, any molecular biologist or geneticist worth his salt will tell you that our DNA is spliced. Human DNA is not an evolved DNA. It is a patchwork of genetic material. In Middle Tennessee State University in 2005, some undergraduate students and some high school students moved sound beyond the speed of light. It was published in the American Institute of Physics in 2007 and very quickly buried beneath a big pile of other nonsense so that nobody could discover it. Because once you know that sound moves infinitely fast, and not just faster than the speed of light, you start thinking differently. And this is why we can say that resonance is the fabric of creation. And we start to understand how God said, "Let there be light." And then we are also told that we cannot create or destroy energy. And then in the next breath they tell us about the Big Bang, where everything in creation came forth out of the Big Bang, out of nothing. It was just created. Oh, but you can't create energy. But you just told me you did. You created the whole bloody universe. So what is it? Can you or can't you? But this is so. Just understand that everything we've been told is a lie. Okay, it's as simple as that. I know it sounds very dramatic, and I'm going off my script here. But the closer you get to this research, the more you realize that not just some things, everything we've been told is a lie. And these big chunks of lies are always attached to a little bit of truth, like, it's raining today. Yes, I can see that. And that's attached to a huge lie. So we get confused about what is true and what is a lie, because it is so convoluted with thousands of years of lying and abuse. So do we have physical evidence of tools and artifacts from ancient times? Absolutely. I'm going to speed up a little bit. The stone tools and artifacts that I've been collecting are some very dramatic examples. This stone, for example, the sacred donut-shaped stone, or the Taurus stone as we call it now, that gives off incredible power, incredible energy fields. These stones, for example, just by lying there on its own, gives off more than 3,500 decibels of sound coming out of this stone. And if you know what that means, you'll understand how powerful it is. It is intense energy coming out of these stones, intense. stones that ring like bells, and then the cone-shaped tools that I've been collecting. And I think I was the first one to really start recognizing these cone-shaped tools that led me down a path of unimaginable discovery. Because when you start seeing the cone-shaped tools, a whole new world of understanding of the use of sound opens up for you. Because these are actually the tips of the Caesar beams, of the hypersound technology that the ancients used, the cone-shaped tools that distort vortex fields, that distort gravity fields around the vortex field, around the Caesar beam that shoots out the tip. And this is how Edward Skelman built Coral Castle. He built it with ice cream cones in his hands. Apparently he was seen by two schoolboys that said, oh, they saw the man levitating those huge 10-ton blocks of coral on his own with ice cream cones. And I went, aha, cones? Yes, of course, because he knew how it worked. You cannot build this structure on your own without advanced technology. It's simply not possible. And then you start finding cones and cone-shaped tools all over the world, pretty much in all ancient civilizations. This one is from an iron mine in England, this cone-shaped tools in Egypt, and more Egyptian tools, but these are funerary cones that are inscribed with true of voice, sound. Interesting connection. Native American medicine men use cone-shaped tools in their underground kivas, in their special ceremonies. The conical tower in Great Zimbabwe is just a big cone facing the sky. So I wonder what they were beaming up into the sky from Great Zimbabwe. In Australia, cone-shaped tools, and these cone-shaped hats, golden cone-shaped hats for special ceremonies. And why are wizards' hats cone-shaped? And why do wizards' wands, or why are they cone-shaped? And if not, then they have a crystal at the end of it. Just like this Mayan deity holding two cone-shaped tools in his hands. And this other Mayan statue, the sculpture, holding two cones in his hands. And even in Sumeria, for the creation of Adam, or the creation of Adamu, we get shown this guy standing there with a cone in his hand. And it just goes on and on. These winged beings and bird-headed beings manipulating humanity with cones that even resemble pine cones, manipulating humanity with those. And it seems that they were doing something to our pineal gland and our DNA, the tree of life, and manipulating that, because for many of us, we'll understand now that the all-seeing eye of Horus is actually connected to the pineal gland, which should be a receiver, which should allow us to have extrasensory perception, to give us the ability to communicate telepathically, and that has been destroyed. And these logos and these images, the all-seeing eye of Horus, the cones, are still encoded in the logos of the companies that control us today. The telephone, the TV companies, there's your all-seeing eye of Horus. They're your cones in the NBC logo. These logos, these people know exactly what they're doing when they create these logos for themselves. And this is how they keep enslaving us, with sound and frequency, without our knowledge. These cones are found at a Rosicrucian museum in San Jose. These are Sumerian cones found in the walls of the temples of Sumer, and they're inscribed with Sumerian cuneiform. And all of them commemorate the building of the stone temples in Sumeria. One of them specifically refers to the building of the temple of Inanna. Now we've got Edward Skelman building Coral Castle with cones, and here we have cones building the temple of Inanna. I think we have a very strong argument that the cones were very powerful tools in the use of that. And then it goes even further. Just recently discovered that the dragonfly uses tiny cones on its wings to manipulate its flight. The dragonfly does not flap its wings, it vibrates its wings. And those are not veins. That's a network of tubes hollow tubes in the wings of the dragonfly, and the frequency of the vibration of its wings makes a sound and goes into those tubes. Guess what's at the intersection of each one of those little tiny tubes, or scattered along it? Tiny little cones. So when the dragonfly vibrates its wings, it creates these tiny little Caesar beams or vortex fields that creates a gravity-free area around the dragonfly, so it can just move around and manipulate its way around as it wants. And this principle of using insects' wings and the technology in insects, this is where the word biomimicry becomes so important, right? When we start mimicking the nature around us and we think that we are smart. Well, this guy here, Viktor Grebennikov, created a levitation device from insect wings. And this is well described how he moved faster than the speed of sound on this little thing up that he built. There he is. And he just used insect wings to create a levitation device. Now, when you tell this to somebody, they think you're crazy until you know how it all works and fits together. All to do with sound and resonance. And now you can start imagining, if our pineal gland is connected to our optic nerve in our eyes, and it was functioning properly, which at the moment it's not, and we have the use of cones in our eyes, at the back of our eyes, we have what? Rods and cones in our retina. Cones. If we can connect our optic nerve to our pineal gland and we can project our thoughts and we speak our words, we should be able to manifest anything we think or say, and we should even be able to do this like Superman. But all this has been severed from us because we've become a species with amnesia, and we've been so manipulated that we have no idea who we are, where we come from, and why we're here, and our true potential to be co-creators of this universe and everything in our lives. The most shattering information about our origins comes to us from the Sumerian tablets, where we meet the Anunnaki and Enlil and Enki and Anu, and it's always about the gold. They were obsessed with the gold. It seems that their main obsession, or their main reason for coming to planet Earth in the beginning, was to mine the gold. And all this gold mining happened in a place called the Abzu, where the gold came from. Some of the translations about the gold mining: in the Abzu, Enki plans was conceiving where to build his house, where for heroes dwellings to prepare, where the bowels of the earth to enter, to mine the gold. Then some of Enki's mines and technology: the earth splitter, Enki there established, there within the earth a gash to make, by way of tunnels, earth's innards to reach, the golden veins to uncover. It's just spectacular. They're telling us exactly what is going on. And then Enki needed some help, because there weren't enough of these Anunnaki or Anunna gods. They needed help, so they decided to clone a bloody primitive species. Wouldn't you? Of course, we need some help. Let's clone some dumb people and we'll put them to work. Let us create a Lulu, a primitive worker, the hardship work to take over. Let the being the toil of the Anunnaki carry on his back. And it continues. A primitive worker shall be created. Our command will he understand. Our tools he will handle. To the Anunnaki in the Abzu relief shall come. So this Abzu is referred to as the place where the gold was being mined. So to find the Abzu, we obviously need evidence of ancient ruins and massive scale gold mining. I've already shown you the massive scale gold mining in southern Africa. There can be no doubt about it that that's where the ancient gold was being mined. Now all we need to do is find huge number of ancient ruins. And bingo, we've got those too, all in southern Africa. The stone circles and the stone ruins of southern Africa is the evidence we're looking for. Why? Because there are more than 10 million of these ancient ruins in southern Africa. Not just a handful, more than 10 million is what I counted. Just to show you what some of them look like, they never stand alone. Remember cymatic patterns? sand on a metal plate. Now, every time you see a stone circle, remember, this is what's happening. And they're all connected by these channels. They never stand alone. Even if it looks like it's a stone circle on its own, that is a modified version of it. The original version is connected, like to all the other stone circles, with a never-ending network of these channels, like wires that are connecting them all together. See that network, that spider web effect around it, around the stone circle? There's a channel that comes out of it and into the bigger channel there. And then we get these flower-shaped stone circles that resemble magnetrons. That's very important. Remember magnetron, it's an energy generating device, high frequency, resonance cavity. So just think of how our lungs work. So if we are the magnetron and we breathe the air that we push into our lungs, that's the magnetron. It breathes the air, pushes it into the lungs, and they're the hexagonal cells, the alveoli of this structure. Right? So start seeing what these stone circles were actually for. It wasn't just for mining gold, it was for many other things. And there just, you know, the spider's web effect and the channels that connect everything together. There's another cluster of hexagonal cells like in your lungs. There's your bronchus, or bronchi, in your lungs coming towards it, into the alveoli, and the stone circles generating the energy for it. And these were possibly also cloning chambers, like bees clone and breed their babies in hexagonal honeycombs. Okay? When you go and see the movie The Island, if you can, after this, just to remind you of what is possibly going on here. This is just very close to Machadodorp, where Paul Kruger's golden train was last seen. Just to put it into context. And this is on top of the mountain, just where I live. About a 100-kilometer radius from there, that's what this would have looked like a long time ago. Archaeological drawings from 1939 show us no doors, no entrances, all connected by those channels. And sometimes they're concentric circles with no doors and no entrances. So these are clearly tools and machines. And right at the heart of it is Adam's calendar. And Adam's calendar is where Credo Mutwa was initiated in 1937 as a young shaman. He calls it Inzalo Yelanga in Zulu, or birthplace of the sun, where humanity was created by the gods. And guess what the name of the god was that created humanity, even in African culture? Enki, as in Sumerian. He's referred to as Enkai, but it's the same guy. This is what Adam's calendar looks like from the helicopter. That's north, that is south. Those are the two central calendar stones. Think of them as vibrating plates, resonating plates. And there's your Horus stone, and there are the three stones of Orion. And that is a circular structure originally, right on the edge of the cliff, and this drops down about 200 or 300 meters down here into the Barberton Valley. There's the Barberton Valley. It's a kilometer lower below here. And in the distance there, you see the pyramids that are lined up with the rise of Orion. And this brings us to the question, where did Paul Kruger get all his gold from? Well, the Boer soldiers were known for hiding out in tunnels from the British troops. And I believe that it was in the process of digging one of these tunnels to hide from the British, they stumbled upon one of these tunnels. Except this time it wasn't filled with a statue of Viracocha, but it was filled with gold. Anunnaki gold, original gold. And that made Paul Kruger the most dangerous and the most powerful man in the world overnight. He had no idea what he found. He thought he found some hidden treasure from the British or someone. And if he'd only known what he had discovered, he would have dealt with it very differently. But the British knew what he had discovered, because who are the British? They have the bloodline, the royal bloodline. They know about the Anunnaki, they know about their tunnels, they know about their gold. And when they saw Paul Kruger with all this gold, they went, oh my God, that little troublemaker in southern Africa found our secret stash of gold. And they threw 470,000 soldiers at the problem to contain it. And contain they did, because they won the war, and the rest is now history. So the question is, what are these ruins for in southern Africa? Well, they were certainly not dwellings for people, and they were not dwellings for cows. They're all made up of very special stone that rings like bells, and it conducts sound. It is metamorphosized quartzite, very strong in crystalline substance. The stone that rings like bells is when I realized that we're dealing with sound at the core of this. Just a very quick example of some of these stones ring like bells. And also to show you how some of these other stones ring like bells. This is what I call, and as you can see, we find many of these elongated stones. This one is full of patina. See, I'm using one of those cones to hit it with. It's thick patina cone. It's quite dull, but you can still hear the effect. I was probably creating a Caesar beam going out the window. At two different frequencies. Dun, 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 dun. They're quite for the tone deaf people. Look at this one. And it looks also like it was inserted into something up to that point. And also, remember, they all ring like bells. This one is no exception. You notice the same note. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a B flat. There we go. One of those is a B flat. One of those. That's what you want. Okay, you got the idea. People, this is all silicon-based technology. That's what we're dealing with here, right? Silica, quartz, quartzite, crystalline substance, the most advanced technology we use in the world today. Silica conducts light, it conducts sound, it stores memory and information. Today we know that we can store digital data in crystals. Trillions of terabytes can be stored in crystal. Even more can be stored in water. Water has infinite memory. And this is not good for business. This is why this is not being made available in the mainstream media, that you can do this. So suddenly when you see Superman fly to his home somewhere in the North Pole or wherever he lives, and he moves around the crystals, you know that there's a lot of knowledge in whoever created that movie. They knew all about that, and they encoded it in our movie. So all these ancient structures are not just machines, but they're also giant memory banks that have all the knowledge and memory encoded in the crystalline structures. And Stonehenge just carried all the knowledge and information of everything that's ever happened there, and the maneuvering and so forth. So it'd be interesting to see what somebody that can, you know, develop a device, go up to Stonehenge and plug it in and start downloading some interesting information. Just make sure you put it out on YouTube before the guys in the black helicopters get to it. So these ancient structures are clearly now giant machines, we know it, and they all seem to work with resonance and with sound. Even the Bosnian pyramid, the more we look at it, the more it looks like it functions like a giant lung. The tunnels underground that lead to the pyramids are like the bronchi and the alveoli of the human lungs, and the pyramid is the lung, and or the energy device, and the tunnels have wind and air moving through them, resonating certain frequencies, bringing the pyramid to life, making it, giving it the energy that it needs to perform the function that it's supposed to perform. So that's how I see the Bosnian pyramid at the moment. But Sam Osmanagic will tell you a lot more about that. So giant machines, giant resonators, remember they align with the movement of the sun. There's a reason why, because when the sun comes up on the summer solstice and the light comes down this passage, it hits a standing stone. Well, what's a stone? It's a crystalline substance. The light and the sound activates the stone. It's like hitting enter on your computer, and it starts the machine. And the machine does what it's supposed to do. And then when the sun moves, and on the winter solstice, it comes down somewhere else, or at a certain time, some other star light comes down a passage, it hits another stone, and it activates the machine to do something else, or to stop doing what it started doing here. So these ancient sites are activated by the movement of the sun, the movement of the stars, and the sound and the light that we get from those. And they're still alive, people. The pyramids are still alive. They might not be fully functional, but they're still giving us resonance. Otherwise, we wouldn't be taking photographs like this. Some huge energy is still coming out of those pyramids. And the same with the stone circles. They're just cymatic patterns representing the sound frequency coming out of the earth. Every stone circle is a cymatic representation of the sound frequency at that specific point. And the stones on top of the earth capture that energy, they amplify that energy and turn it into a very powerful energy generating device. And that's what's happening here. All connected. It's one giant energy grid in southern Africa. And that's what we're dealing with here. To do what? That is $1 million question. One of the key things here is that if a little magnetron, a magnetron inside a laser beam, can cut metal in a split second. Oh, can cut metal in a split second. That was a joke. Can cut metal in a split second. Can you imagine how much energy a magnetron, 20 meters in diameter, made out of quartz, out of crystalline substance? Do you know how much energy one of these magnetrons will create? Apparently, more than all the power plants on Earth today. The amazing thing is, we don't just have one magnetron in South Africa, we have thousands. So, let's put them to use. That's what we're working on. We measured electromagnetic waves and fields, sound frequencies, the loudness in decibels, and this thing called heat signature. I'm not going to go into details now, but we measured in this particular room, coming out of these walls here, nothing outside, just coming out of the walls, 33.5 gigahertz. It's insane. 33.5 gigahertz of sound coming out. It's the resonance, the resonating, vibrating quartz in the walls that give us that frequency. Because some people argue that sound can't even travel at those frequencies through air. So, you know, that's a very interesting, debatable subject. Then the electromagnetic fields run horizontally. In this case, they run horizontally, creating like a shield over this ruin here at 580 megahertz. The sound coming out of the walls is beyond 30,000 decibels, people. 30,000 decibels. That is insane power and energy. We can't even imagine that kind of energy. And then at Adam's calendar, it just goes off the charts. More than 375 gigahertz. There's the calendar, it's a circular structure. As you approach it, there's nothing. As you cross that imaginary circle, so there's not even a wall there. The moment you step in there, it shoots to beyond 375 gigahertz. The electromagnetic fields run horizontally this way, so it blocks the satellite, you lose GPS in there. And then between the two stones in the middle, it changes and it runs vertically out of the ground into the sky. So what we have there, scientifically measured and verified, is an active vortex or an active portal with unimaginable high frequencies and energy fields that run through it still today. It's so badly broken, and yet it gives us all these incredibly high energies. Can you imagine how powerful that'll be in its original structure when it was newly built? So, what is it for? Possibly, who knows, for beaming up the gold. Yeah? Because the Anunnaki were all about the gold. The gold doesn't seem to be on this planet. They were taking it off the planet. Well, maybe this was one of the places that they were doing that. And what else was the stone circles for? I already suggested earlier that it was probably for generating an atmosphere, or oxygenating the air, or cloning people. or cloning beings, because the sound energizes the air, just like in your lungs. And you put sound frequencies through this. There's your bronchi, they're the big channels, smaller channels, and there are clusters of hexagonal ruins over there. So once again, biomimicry. These ancients were mimicking nature. There's your lung, there's your cluster, hexagonal alveoli, oxygenating, more hexagonal structures. Who knows? This here is just too crazy, because this doesn't make any sense. There's no way to maneuver between all these circles that are all connected together. The only thing that I've been able to find a connection to is the tissue of the lung. This is what lung tissue looks like. So I'm thinking that maybe they were generating the right kind of energies and frequencies here, like the lungs do, to be able to generate an atmosphere, or something like that. And that brings us to the Taurus stones. I mentioned already that they create huge amounts of energies that we measured around them. This German scientist, Rainer Gebensleben, measured that this particular stone gives off between 2.2 and 3.4 thousand decibels just by sitting in a room, absorbing the ambient noise and amplifying it. That's what it is. It's an amplification, energy generating device. We put one of those stones in a bucket of water. The next morning, thousands of bubbles formed, spiraling around, going into the center hole. It tells us, the water shows that there's an energy field. I took one of those stones to Nassim Haramein 2 years ago, and on our way to Chicago, this stone was in my bag. They stopped the plane, I was pulled off the plane, and they made me open my bag, and they saw the stone, all because that stone crashed the TSA security system at Doha International Airport. That particular stone that we hold in our hands. That stone is now in a research laboratory in Ashland, Oregon, going through some interesting experiments, because Nassim Haramein couldn't really do much with it. He's got his own area of research, and we expect great things from this. It just tells us how little we know about this ancient technology. Remember that Caesar technology, Caesar beams, using sound as a laser beam, was only introduced to us in 2009. It's just, that's how new it is. Now remember, when you see a laser beam, you can all see that, right? Can you see that? Yeah. Now if this was a Caesar beam, you wouldn't be able to see it, because you can't see sound. You can't see my words going into your ears, can you? But you still understand me. So that's the difference. When you see somebody using laser beams, we can understand, oh, it's a laser beam. Yeah, of course, it's a laser beam. Well, we all act very, very clever. But when it's a Caesar beam and we can't see it, we say, oh, it's rubbish. There's nothing there, look. It's like, really? It's like, just because you can't see it, it's not there? That's how stupid we are. So if you see someone moving things around with cones, with ice cream cones, with Caesar beams, you'd go, what's going on here? It wouldn't compute, because our minds are not wired like that. We can't think like that yet, but now you can. You can go away from here and you can think of that, and it'll make sense to you. You don't need to see the Caesar beam. You don't need to see the fact that it's distorting gravity. You'll just see the effect. And to most of us, that would simply look like magic, right? And that's exactly what the wizards were able to do with their wands and their stupid cone-shaped hats and all this stuff in the past. So it all starts to fall into place, right? And this is how I think they were possibly using this. These stones were possibly used as the energy source that was then put in there, and then bingo. Edwin Skalman, ice cream cones, Mayan deity, cone-shaped tools. There's a guy levitating a block with these cone-shaped tools. Where do you want it, honey? Okay, come on, I can't stand like this all day long, you know? Where do you want the car? Can you imagine how much fun you'd have doing this? Let's put the car on the roof tonight. Forget that the roof isn't strong enough to hold the car. Yeah? Hindsight, 2020 vision. So this brings us to the fact that all these ancient sites, just like Valerie Overoff was saying earlier, are not just built randomly, they're all built on very specific energy points. How much time have I got left? Sorry, I've been talking for this. Oh, it's just now, right? There is no time. So, they're all built on very important energetic grids. Ley lines, crossing of energetic lines, not just thrown around. And this is fantastic because this clay tablet tells us what's going on. And this is really, that's the tablet. This is spectacular. When I found this, I couldn't believe my luck. This is what it says. In distant days, in those days after destinies had been decreed, after An and Enlil had set up regulations for heaven and earth. These are powerful dudes, man. Who are these guys? Enki, the exalted knowing God, by the rules for heaven and earth, the fixed rules, he set up the cities, the temples, these ancient sites, were set up according to some sort of an energetic grid line that's in the heavens, in the skies, and that's mirrored and echoed on the surface of the earth. According to that energetic grid, they set up the cities. And these are the Anunnaki that we're referring to here in the Sumerian texts. And then David Wilcock, several years ago, found that the American Space Command and Air Force has this encoded in their logos. These lines, these white lines around all their logos, always have a version of these lines going around the planet. Can you see the grid around the planet, the network? Okay, and then these lines, that represents the rules, the fixed rules of heaven and earth. And they refer to these lines as the rules, believe it or not. Some sort of energetic code, that's an energetic field around the earth. They refer to it as the rules. They don't know where it comes from, but it's always been there. It's just an amazing discovery. And that's when I suddenly got a call from my friend Paul Gravenstein, who's just a farmer in South Africa, who discovered the power of resonance. Just like Nikola Tesla. One morning he woke up and he had dreams about these machines. He started building them, and 20 years later, he has mastered the ability to create resonance fields that can make things levitate, that can cure cancer, that can heal a land, make your crops grow faster and bigger, make your crops not be eaten or destroyed by bugs. So he works with farmers mostly to fix the fields. He's keeping the healing side of his work very quiet. Well, not after this presentation. But he phoned me while I was researching these rules in the sky, these energy field around the earth, and he phoned me and he says, and I'm one of the few people that he talks to because he knows that I won't think he's crazy. And he says, listen, I've started measuring this energy field around the earth, and it's made up of zeros and ones. It's a binary code energy field around the planet. This is what he told me. He says, and if you break it, he sent up some signals to break it. The moment it breaks, it just closes up again. It's just this field that keeps fixing itself and repairing itself. It's like this field that they refer to in here, the rules, the fixed rules of heaven and earth that we read about in the bloody Sumerian tablets. It's just insane that we start putting this together, and now we get farmers that measure it. And that brings us to these cities and these ancient sites. And that clearly by now you realize that when you look at that, that is not a place for people. It's not a place to go and worship. These obelisks are giant antennae that stick into the sky. They're either putting something into the sky or they're bringing something out of the sky. When you put your head, your ear next to this obelisk and you tap it, it rings like a bell. It's spectacular. So these are resonant antennae that are up into the sky. Too many pillars, not enough space. This is not for worshipping this god or that god, or kissing butt over here, or bringing food over here. It's just, that's all the lies and the deceptions that we've been told now for the last 200 years. And all of us just believe it. That's the BS that we've been sold. Just Too many pillars, not enough space, weird rectangular structures. Look, there were more pillars here. And when you realize the Parthenon is the same, there's your ambient chamber surrounded by what used to be a geometric pattern, just like the structures in Egypt. There's your entrance to this whole structure. There's your ambient, another ambient chamber that's connected to that structure. And you realize that there's more ambient chambers that look like the Parthenon, connected to this whole area here, which is not dwelling quarters, historian style. So that's where the people used to live. Really? Take some more drugs, buddy. There's another resonant or concentric circles with no entrance on top, in front of a big, what do you call it, a platform with all these pillars and that big ambient chamber there. All this stuff is crystalline substance, silica. We're not dealing with temples, we're dealing with templates. Templates for giant circuit boards. Silicon-based technology on a huge, huge scale. These are giant circuit boards, the way we build them tiny in computers today. Built on a scale we can only just dream of today. What were they doing? They were generating energy, putting it up into the sky to keep up that grid in the sky. But today they're broken. They don't work that well anymore. You know, when I was in contact in the desert 2 years ago, when I first launched this new discovery of mine, I hadn't seen anyone else talk about it before, so I was surprised. But in any case, when I came out of the presentation, a guy came to me and said, I'm a circuit board designer in Silicon Valley. And I said, that's exactly. And he started explaining to me what this would do and how it would work. It was just amazing. And then here, you've got microprocessors on a gigantic scale. That's one of these, you know. So, and this here, the macroprocessors, this, I love this one. And look, these are coated with gold. Little vibrating antennae, just like these vibrating pillars over here. And the pyramids are the same. Giant resonant devices. I mean, look at this. I mean, there's three things there. There's three things here. It actually looks like a map of the pyramid, the Giza pyramid. It's ridiculous. So these are the rules of heaven and earth. These structures kept up this energy grid, or doing something else much more than we can imagine. And it seems that human sound was used as a source of this energy. That becomes even weirder, people. This is why we find amphitheaters, the most perfect acoustic structures. Do you know how acoustically incredible these structures are? If you've ever been to one of those, you can whisper on that stage and it amplifies. You can hear it clearly through the entire place. If you fill that place with 1,000 or 2,000 people and they make a bloody noise like people at a soccer game, do you know how much energy you're creating there? And that energy gets channeled into that circuit board, it activates a circuit board, and bingo. There's another circuit board, very badly destroyed. There's your amphitheater, there's your line of resonating pillars taking the sound to plug into the amphitheater there. There's another circuit board on top of the mountain. There's your amphitheater that used to connect to it. Here's another one in Algeria. Here's the amphitheater right in the middle of the circuit board. and then I discovered that even Sacsayhuaman in Peru, it's the same thing. These are not defensive walls. These are channels for creating a specific resonance out of the air and the wind moving through it that moves up to the top and activates the circuit board with a specific frequency that gets created by that shape. There you can see it better. That's why there are 3 lines there. You've got 2 channels, resonant frequencies going up there. This is just a more dramatic view of what's going on there. So nothing has changed since the ancient times up to 2015, really. The temples have just become our churches, and the obelisks have become steeples in churches. I mean, who came up with this design? You know, really? Come on. When you look at some churches, you actually see the encoded knowledge. So you got this, the rounded top, and then you got a, there's another example. There's your cone. Can you see the cone facing the sky? The cone-shaped thing, and all the mosques driving here, from Bosnia through Slovenia, Croatia, coming in here, all the mosques have, on top of the pillars, have got these cones. And on top of the cone are these bubbles. Some of them have 1 bubble, some of them 2 or 3 bubbles, 4 bubbles, 5 bubbles. It's as if they're sending different pulses into the sky. It's like 3 bubbles that go. This is a different frequency that it sends up into the sky. So these are all just constantly sending sound waves of human sounds. And especially places like this. This is filled with anxiety, fear, guilt, all these feelings and the energies that we create inside these so-called sacred places, these churches, which are just traps for our energy. And now we don't need to have obelisks and these Egyptian temples anymore, because our cities have become these giant circuit boards. The city grids, that's how they're structured, like city grids. Our buildings, that they stick out like vibrating. Do you know how much vibration and energy comes out of those buildings, with people inside them making a noise, phones ringing, people talking, running up and down, elevators going zzz. I mean, it's vibrating all the time. We are constantly making so much bloody noise. We never stop making a noise. And then the one city grid is connected to another city grid with the channels, just like in South Africa, between the stone circles. You've got these channels that connect them. Well, these channels connect the city grids to each other. They never stop making a noise. So we continue being the supply of energy to something, holding up some sort of an energetic grid around us. And now suddenly it makes sense when you go watch the movie The Matrix again, when Morpheus holds up the battery and says, "We are the energy." I didn't understand it when I first saw that. Now it makes a whole different sense, because you can start seeing how it all fits together and how bloody stupid and ignorant we are. So what have we learned from this? Because I started by saying we must learn from this. So yes, see this as a positive thing. See this as we're coming into enlightenment. We're recognizing who we are. We're recognizing that we are enslaved on our own planet. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because now we know it. Now we know that we have to do something about it. Because I don't want another 6,000 years of this, or 12,000 years of this, or however long it's been since this real manipulation of humanity began. But it's probably the last 12 or 14,000 years from the flood. See, the flood was the big dividing line when this manipulation really started. So we are not born free on our planet. If you think you're born free, you're still completely delusional. Wake up, smell your coffee, and do something about it. We cannot move around freely. Try and move across the border without a passport. Good luck to you. You've got 1,000 Syrians sitting on your doorstep here. Right? Good thing they need passports, right? Try and move around freely. It doesn't happen. We cannot live where we choose to. We have to follow rules and laws that have been made. How many of you signed an agreement at birth that you will obey the rules of the country that you were born into? How many of you signed an agreement at birth? Not a single one of us. And yet, those rules are imposed on us. What? That is called slavery. That's not freedom. Absolute slavery. Every single one of us is born into slavery, and money is the tool that controls the slavery. Until you digest this bit of information, you will continue missing the point, and you'll continue throwing yourself back into the slavery system until you dealt with the concept of money, and that money is the tool of slavery. It's not about the money. It's about using the money as the tool. Those that control the money can print as much money as they want. They can print $1 trillion a day. It doesn't matter, because the money doesn't exist. It's the control of the money that controls the people. And this is why Wolfgang Goethe, I nearly said Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. This is why Wolfgang Goethe said that none are more enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. And that makes most of us those who falsely believe they are free. And hopefully by the time you leave here, if you still have those notions, you will throw that out the window and realize that although we are enslaved, we now know this. We know we have to do something about it. But the best news I can give you today, we've already started doing something about it. We have a plan, and we are implementing that plan. And that's what makes it so exciting, that we know what we have to do to get our freedom back, and that's getting rid of the money. So, the invasion of the world started by the Europeans really around the 14th century, 15th century. The one common denominator they found when they invaded all the native populations of the world, they found they had no money and they had no jails. None of the native people around the world had jails. So what did they do? They gave them European books. They destroyed all their knowledge. They gave them all the European books and thinking, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, the British, all those. And they built churches, they gave them Bibles, and they gave them money. They built courts, they made rules, and they built jails. That's it. It's like a sequence of events. It's like a plan of action. Every new territory that you invade, okay, you sever the people from their ancestors and their ancestral knowledge. You separate them from their ancestral knowledge. This is how you create a species with amnesia. This is why today, 500 years later, we're all looking around going, what's going on? Because of what happened 500 years ago. That's when the true onslaught on humanity began. But I know that we're all Europeans, but we've got to recognize that these were the thugs, I call them the thugs from Europe, that invaded the world, because that's all they were, under the leadership of the Pope and all those people that hide their crimes behind their veils. Today, 500 years later, our entire planet is one giant corporation, and they rule the world. Money has become the holy cow. You can attack the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Jainists. You can attack anyone, and you'll probably have some friends. But the moment you attack money, people go, what? And they start going into convulsions because they go into fear, and they go, well, what do you mean? We've got to get rid of money. How are we going to buy things? It's just insane. People forget that it's not money that does anything. We do everything. People do things. Money does nothing. It just gets in the way of us doing things and getting things. Right? Every day, 7.5 billion people wake up and we do something. And yet, at the end of that day, very few of us can afford what it is that we created because we don't have enough money. That's an insane system. If we live in a village and we build a bridge across the river because we need to get to the forest to bring the wood to the village, at which point do we give our bridge to a corporation so they can charge us money to use our bridge? Are we going to do that? Of course not. And yet that's what we do every day. This is happening to us. Everything that we create or build or invent, the technology we invent, is used by corporations against us. Is used by governments against us. It's not used for the benefit of humanity. So you can start seeing that the government is not your friend. The government is not your friend. Corporations are not a solution. We have to find a whole new system. I'm going to skip through this because you know this already. The Hollywood movies and blockbusters are full of this encoded messages, and they give us this information in a subliminal form to help us wake up, because they can't leave the rest of humanity behind, because that'll create too much of a separation between where the elite are and where humanity is, just completely in the dark. The Wizard of Oz is a great example. The Wizard of Oz. Oz is ounces of gold. The Wizard of the Gold. He who rules and controls the gold will rule the world. So, and that's how it goes. You know, there's Dorothy, she's the only human being, and her friend are all inhumane, and that's the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow is made of what? Of straw. The straw man. Your legal fiction, your persona, your birth certificate, your ID document. That's what the straw man represents. And he wanted, I think he wanted a heart, because he wanted to be human. There's the Tin Man, T-I-N, tax identification number. And that's how it goes. There's a lion. The lion, the elite, that is a coward. He roars when he's supported by everyone, but when he's alone, he becomes a coward and goes into hiding. And it's exactly what the elite are. Remember, it's the minority ruling the majority. A tiny, tiny, small amount of people who are roaring like the lion, pretending to be the Wizard of Oz. They control the money, they control the gold, and we are all scared of them. It's insane. What can we do about it? Find a brand new system. How many of you are happy with the way the world is going? Hands up. You see, no one. In 6 years of asking this question, there's 100% unhappiness. So let's do something about it. But that means moving into higher consciousness and embracing this concept of unity. Only out of unity can you find infinite diversity. We have to learn from the ancients, and the ancients in Africa have a word called Ubuntu, which means unity with community. I am who I am because who we all are. And this is why we are now promoting this concept, this African ancient philosophy called Ubuntu, as a foundation and a platform for a new society, completely removed from the money-driven society we find ourselves in today. A lot of the information is written in the Ubuntu book. It is also available in Croatian, which is available outside by Draco, who is the publisher of the Ubuntu book in Croatian. Thank you, Draco, for doing that. Just very briefly, what is this word called contributionism? Well, it is a modern word for an ancient philosophy of Ubuntu, because we live in a modern world. We can't go back living out in the mountains, and that's not going to happen. So how are we going to change our lives tomorrow when we wake up? Well, contributionism means exactly that, where people contribute their skills and talents towards the greater benefit of everyone else in their town and their community. Contributionism has 5 major points. No money, no barter, no trade, no value attached to anything greater than anything else, because each one of our contributions should always be equally valuable. And where everybody contributes their talents and their skills towards the benefit of everyone in the community. All our lives we've been told that capitalism and democracy is good, that competition is good, that without competition there'd be no progress, there'd be no inventions, and we'd be living in the dark ages. That's the big lie, people. That's part of the matrix control system. Competition leads to hierarchical structure, it leads to control, to compartmentalization of knowledge of information, it leads to the hiding of technology, the hiding of cures for disease, it leads to scarcity of food. That's what competition and capitalism does. Cooperation is a simple reversal of the way we think. The moment we start to cooperate and collaborate, we create abundance on an unimaginable scale. And you'll see what I mean by that. Because only out of unity, working together, can we create infinite diversity. Think of your body. Trillions of cells in your body, not fighting each other, all working together for the benefit of your body. So think of your town or your village or your community as an extension of your body. Every single one of us has a critical role to perform. The heart doesn't, even if the cells become specialized, some of the cells become the heart cells, and some of the cells become the lung cells, and some become the skin cells. They're not competing against each other, they're still working together for the benefit of the whole community of cells. And that's really what this whole new system is all about. Mimicking nature, biomimicry, working together. When you wake up in the morning, you go for breakfast, and your daughter comes in, she has a glass of orange juice, and your son comes in. This is the model family. Husband, wife, daughter, son. And your son has some scrambled eggs, and your wife comes in and has some cheese, and blah, blah, blah. At which point do you turn to your daughter and say, oh, that orange juice is going to be $5. And son, what did you have? The Rice Krispies? No, okay, that's $2.50. And darling, what did you have? You don't do that, right? We share, we love, we share things. That's what we are. Even when you go to the pub and you meet a stranger in the pub, you invite them for a barbecue at your house. You don't charge them for the meat or the beer they drank. You invited them into your home. We share. We, by nature, we're loving, sharing individuals. But come Monday morning, We get in our cars, and everything changes. And we become little monsters. After the money, oh, gotta get to the office, time is money. And we just become. No wonder we got split personalities. No wonder we so unhappy. So it's all about brands, corporations, careers, jobs. Remember, jobs means slave. Every time a politician says we're going to create 1 million more jobs means we're going to create 1 million more slaves. That's what this is all about. And I'm going to go through this quickly because we need to end up here. Origins of money comes from the Sumerian texts, very clearly tells us that the first priest kings were the first bankers. They were appointed by the gods, and they were given advanced knowledge and weaponry to control the people. They were also the first owners of the land, these first priest kings, and they created money. Money did not evolve out of thousands of years of barter and trade. They created clay tablets, like the first forms of negotiable instruments and bills of exchange. This is how far back the banking system goes. It's quite insane. So money was maliciously introduced as a tool of enslavement, and it did not evolve out of barter and trade. In fact, very recent archaeological discoveries conclude exactly that ancient cultures did not barter and trade. There's no evidence of bartering and trading in ancient cultures. Very, very ancient cultures. It's a very interesting new discovery. Kings owned all the land, they were the first bankers, and the temples were the first banks. Very important information. Remember that the banking families today, just a small number of them that run the world, they are the organized crime syndicate on this planet. They hold the planet at ransom. They control everything. They make as much money as they want because it comes out of thin air. They even control our thoughts. That's how bad it's become. Remember, private banks, all banks are private banks. Today, there are no, really very few banks that operate differently unless you get community banks. There's some exceptions, but that's not even necessary to mention. But all our central banks are private corporations that belong to these banking families that are controlled from the city of London and Basel, Switzerland. And they control the economic policies, they dictate the policy to our governments, and the most important thing is they create our future generations through the education system. This is where it becomes so critical and important. The education system has got nothing to do with teaching us skills for life, or ability to survive, or to work together. It's got nothing to do with that. Our education system is just a manipulation tool. It destroys our ability to think for ourselves. It's a place to hide knowledge and information. New discoveries are protected and hidden at universities and in laboratories. Who funds the research? The bankers fund the research. They fund the universities. They fund all the best technology. So remember that before you think that the education system is designed to actually serve our communities and our humanity. The main objective of our current education system is to create a future obedient labor force. You come out of school with a certificate, and that makes you entitled to go look for a job that pays you money. You can't bake bread, you can't do anything, but you have a certificate, and now you're bloody entitled. And you want. I want a new car, I want a new house, I want a job, I want $1 million, and that's it. So I now understand what Pink Floyd meant when they said, we don't need no education. When I first heard that, I wasn't quite sure, but those guys were way ahead of the pack, right? We don't need your mind control. We can teach our children much better than the education system today. So wherever I go, I tell the people the following: take your children out of school now, not tomorrow, not next week, not next year. Take them out of school now. Stop torturing your children, exposing them to that disgusting torture camp called a school. You can teach your children much better than any education system can today. If you don't believe that, you're undermining yourself. So take your children out of school. country, I don't know how Croatia is, but if you live in a country where you can still homeschool your children, do it now. Get a group of people together, start homeschooling your children, and use that as a way to get out of the system. We can do that in South Africa, in the USA, Australia, UK, many countries can still homeschool their kids. And if you can't find a loophole in the system, don't stay imprisoned in that, or your children will become like you 20 years from now. Our countries are corporations, you know this is not news, just to show you, There's the Anglo-American, Lehman Brothers, and there's Republic of South Africa. And all our countries are corporations. There's more examples of corporations, cities, provinces, states, everything is a corporation. This is how we've been completely bamboozled by these monsters we call our leaders. So what do people need? We need conferences, tables, chairs, microphones, glasses, water, food, love, friendship, tables, chairs, plants, gongs. We need so many things around us, amazing things. What we don't need is that. Money does not make the world go round, we make the world go round. Money does nothing, people do everything. We grow the food, we create the technology, we solve the mathematical equations. Every day, 7.5 billion people create so much, and yet we have no access to what we create. This is what we need to change. I'm not going to take you through this magic book. I'm going to finish. I'm sure I'm going to finish by now. What's the time now? Okay, I'll finish in 2 minutes. So, people, it's not the love of money, it's the presence of money. We've got to remove the money from the system. The moment you remove money, no crime, no envy, no gluttony, no greed, no hoarding, no hierarchy, no hunger. We are in South Africa. We have a plan of action with the Ubuntu movement, which is a political party. You're not going to be able to implement this unless you implement this from the ground level up, community projects, and from a political level. You have to have a philosophy to uplift the community, but you've got to give the community the political way out to be able to vote that system into place. People say, oh, you're going into politics, you're becoming dirty like the politicians. Really? We want to close the government? We want to close the central bank? We're changing the entire system. We cannot allow the dirty game of politics to rule our lives. By sitting on the fence is not going to solve the problem. The problem is not going to go away. We have to change the political field to serve us, to become a respectable, honorable part of human society that serves the people. That's what we have to do to politics. We can't allow it to rule and ruin our lives. And this is what we're doing with the Ubuntu movement and the Ubuntu party. It is now alive and well in 2 countries, in Australia very soon, in Canada already registered as well. Before you know, we have a political movement of higher consciousness that is going to break down the walls of separation and division and bring this abundance to every single one of us. We have a very simple plan. We have an election coming up next year in South Africa where we're going to plan to transform small towns into these places of abundance. Our aim is to go, I'm going to just go through this very quickly. I'm not going to read the manifesto to you. But our plan on the national level was to create a people's bank, which will issue money tax-free and interest-free for the people, which you can do in a small country very, very quickly. But on a local level, we can't change the central bank, but we can give our town free electricity. We can supply and provide our own electricity. And that's really our plan of action for next year in South Africa. And that's where we want everyone around the world that follows the Ubuntu philosophy to support us in this. If we can win one little town, that's the first domino to fall. There's no turning back, and I hope you understand why I say this. The moment you have an Ubuntu contributionism philosophy in one tiny little town, when one little municipality, the moment we have that, it creates a domino effect right around you. In our country, across the borders, and thousands of towns around the world will take the same rule. Our whole plan is free electricity, that's our promise for next year's election, and the electricity becomes a tool of unification. Everybody contributes 3 hours a week towards one of the community projects. What does that do? That turns our town into a powerful labor force. In return, people get free electricity, they get free food, whatever it is we create in our community projects. we get for free because you've contributed your 3 hours a week. What that means that you don't have to have a change of life. You can keep your job. You can still work for the bank if you want to. All you have to do is contribute 3 hours a week to one of the community projects, and you see how this abundance grows. It is spectacular. We create 3 times as much as what we need, so we can make the excess available to our neighboring communities and force them to get out of the capitalistic model. Why? Because we can, because we've chosen to do so. That's how simple it is. So the benefit is free electricity, free food, free milk, bread, cheese, whatever, everything we create. And that also brings in a whole new education system. Each one of these community projects suddenly becomes a place of education. Within 2 or 3 years, every one of us in our town will know how to bake bread, how to grow food, how to create an electricity device, how to build a bridge, how to build a rocket, how to weave, how to sew, how to make shoes. Everyone will have these skills because you'll be doing it as part of your 3 hours a week. A very exciting time ahead. So what I'm going to do is end here and say, you know, what can you do right now from this perspective? What you can do is go out there and tell everyone. Share this knowledge and information with people. Don't be afraid of your knowledge. Make sure that you get to learn more about this. Learn as much as you can. If it resonates in your heart, if it doesn't, leave it alone. But every one of us has our own moment of awakening. When this moment comes, when you can no longer shut up and you want to start telling people. It happens to every one of us. So share that information. Get a copy of the Ubuntu book. It's a lot easier to give that to somebody to read than to try to explain this to people. And become a seed of consciousness in your own area. We have a plan. It's a simple plan. And the South African elections 2016 could and will be the point of departure if I have anything to do with it. So go out there, share this message, tell everyone, because once they've heard it, they can never unhear it. Thank you for listening. Questions? I didn't get the brief. I wasn't in the board meeting. Yeah, questions, please, anybody?
Well, the thing is the energy comes from, if it is electromagnetic or whatever, it comes from Earth Mother, isn't it?
Well, at this stage, we don't know where the energy comes from. We're speculating. At the moment, I'm talking about the first step. You know, eventually, we don't need to use energy. What we're going through here, we're taking the first step towards higher consciousness here, higher unity consciousness. We can't go to the end, because that's going to be messy, very messy, right? Many people want to do that, but that's going to leave a lot of people in a turbulent state of mind. So this is a constant conflict between people of various levels of understanding and knowledge. So we need to take a collective step and move gradually towards this higher consciousness and towards this freedom for humanity. And it starts with using electricity as a tool of unification. And there's a very specific reason why we have not achieved a free energy device for every home. Remember, I do these Ubuntu workshops, and the Ubuntu workshops go through in great detail into every one of these areas. So by the time people leave at the end of a full-day workshop, they have a very clear understanding of the plan of action, the philosophy, and they're filled with joy because they know it is so simple. No more obstacles in your mind. We eradicate all those obstacles. We are our own worst enemies all the time. We're saying, oh, but what if this, what if that? Stop doing that, for God's sake. Say, this is where we're going. We don't know what the final outcome is, but we know what the next step should be. We have an idea of the final outcome. We want to live on a beautiful planet that is free to live on, that is abundance beyond our belief, that everything is available to everyone all the time, of a high consciousness level. We can't imagine what that world is going to look like from this vantage point. But what we know we have to do is take the first step towards that. It's a journey of 1,000 miles. We have to take the first step. We've already taken that first step. We're 11 years into that journey. I'm 11 years into that journey. Some people have joined and are several years into it. Some are several months, some are several hours into that journey. So different people enter at different levels and try to learn as much as they can. The reason we haven't had a free energy device that everyone has in their own home is because that's a tool of separation and division. That's not going to unite the people. So the Ubuntu movement is the only movement, as far as I know, that's saying, don't do that. Let's use the community, or the unity of community. The unity and the hearts of people in small towns and small villages, because it's a lot easier to reach people in small towns and small villages, to unite those people and let them think differently. All they have to do, you don't have to change anything. You have to build new infrastructure. You don't have to put in electricity wires. All the infrastructure is there. All you have to do is change the way that people think. Thousands of years of conditioning. That's what we're going to change. And money is at the root of that. Now, if you give everybody an energy device for their home, there'll be those that can afford it and those that can't afford it. Right? So, once again, it's the haves and the don't haves. And if you have it in your house and I don't have it, I'll climb over the wall and I'll steal it from you. So that just creates more separation and more division. And this is where we recognized that we can use that, turn it around and say, right, everyone in our town gets free electricity because we put in our own electricity device for the whole village or the whole town. So there's no discrimination. And in the beginning, while we're still at a lower level of consciousness, a lower level of able to work together, that's a great place to bring the people together. Everybody will participate for 3 hours a week. I certainly know in Africa, where I come from, in the town that I come from, if people get free electricity, everyone is going to be on that bandwagon. No one is going to say no. And this is the critical thing, why we use the electricity as a unification tool. It really is. And this is, when you start looking at it, you also understand why the energy aspect of our lives, energy, petroleum, all that stuff, has probably been the most fiercely protected area of our lives. The energy aspect, together with obviously the healing, the curing cancer and that. But the energy, that's the big one. The moment we have that, we're out of here. There's no turning back. So, this is a huge subject. You know, I ended on this note, but if you want, we've put several of the workshops on YouTube already. They're free for anyone to look at. I'll be doing more online workshops for people that want to learn more, but it's a very simple process that we plan, and everybody gets it. And when we do the Ubuntu workshops, I must tell you, it's like a group therapy session. At the end of the day, there's this resonance of this relief and joy. And it's like everybody breathed out all the anxiety and their fear. It's like, you're just no longer afraid because you know that it's possible. And we are this close from achieving it. Literally, it's a few months away. And if in South Africa we can win one small town, that'll be the first town that'll lead by example. And there'll be thousands that'll follow. Remember, when we win the elections, and I, for argument's sake, become mayor, right? We'll then implement all these things, because we win the election on our manifesto. What does our manifesto say? Our manifesto says that we're going to give our town free electricity. So no one's going to say, well, what are you doing? So we're implementing our manifesto. We're giving our town free electricity. That's what people voted for. And if anyone has a problem with it, they must take it up with God. right? That's a joke. So, you know, the people are the authority. The people have voted what they want. So who's going to tell the people, oh, you can't have it? That means now you're enslaving them. You see how we've become so enslaved. We become like, we keep building up the walls of our own slave camps. We keep telling ourselves, oh, we can't do that. Really? Well, we just voted for this, and this is often what comes up. People say, well, how are you going to put in your free electricity device? Because we can. We got the engineers that know how to do it, we got the technology, and we'll put it in. And we'll simply go to the current electricity supplier, we'll unplug them, like this, it takes about 10 seconds. And we'll plug ourselves in. That's how it works. Any more questions? Are you going to ask anyone for permission for this? No. The people have spoken. They want their electricity. We're going to give the people their electricity. This is how we're going to start thinking. See the solutions. Know how you're going to do it. And if anybody stands in your way, do you have any idea what will happen in South Africa and how that will spread? When we win one town, one municipality, which is normally 4 or 5 towns, one municipality, and we start implementing this free electricity, how long do you think it'll take for the rest of the towns in South Africa to know that we're implementing free electricity? How many hours or days do you think it's going to take? 48 hours max. Every single living South African will know that we're implementing free electricity. What do you think the government's going to do to stop that? Not enough soldiers. Sorry, it's unstoppable. There is no stopping it. You've got to see the solution. Stop tripping yourselves up, people. Stop saying, oh, what are they going to do? Stop doing that. Don't do it, please, I beg you. Stop being your own slave master. See the solution. Watch the beautiful movie, Tomorrowland, or Tomorrow World, or whatever. Tomorrowland. It's the kids that see a positive future. It's the adults that keep thinking, oh, everything is screwed up and negative, and we can't get out of this. And the kids see a beautiful, positive future. So start seeing a beautiful, positive future for ourselves. We are the makers of our own reality. We have a plan of action. And it's going to start with one tiny little town. It's the Achilles heel here. We're going for the Achilles heel approach here. Last year we went into elections. I ran for president. And we learned everything we need to know about the politics. We had far more votes than they gave us. We learned from 1 million followers, we ended up with 5,500 votes. We know that the entire national election system is rigged. On a town-by-town election, that cannot happen because we have observers in each election station, voting station. We know exactly how many votes come in, how many votes have been counted, and the results are released at that voting station. So it is far more difficult to cheat at a local election. So it's a tiny little village that'll become the Achilles heel for the giant, for Goliath. And there's no stopping it after that. The money comes into the community from government. If I'm the mayor, I allocate the money to all the community projects. At the moment, our town gets about 3 million rand a month for services. We see almost nothing from that. It goes into the politicians' pockets. Their cars and houses, right? If we implement that 3 million rand into the community projects, we can start pretty much all the community. We have a list of 24 community projects. Just one of those projects, our fish farm. Our fish farm can generate about 10 million rand per month. It's about $1 million a month. Okay? At the moment, we're getting 3 million rand a month from government. One community project will generate more than 3 times as much as what our town is getting from our government. Can you see what that will do for our community, for our town? It's insane. So while we live in a world with money, it just brings in huge amounts of money into the town for the community that's kept in a community trust fund, not by the government or the municipality. There's a lot more, obviously. The plan of action is far more detailed than what I'm sharing with you here, but it's simple. It's very, very simple. It also includes electing a council of elders, the most trusted people in our community that actually decide what to do for the community, not the politicians. So the moment I become mayor, I actually hand over my control to the Council of Elders, which are 13 of the most trusted people voted for by the people in my town to represent the community, not politicians or businessmen or anyone of that kind of background. So everything changes, and it just shows you how transparent it is. The moment, and just to very quickly show you, how do we deal with existing businesses or factories? Because as a collective, we're going to become a threat to a factory that makes, say, window frames, doors and windows. We have that in our town. All you have to do is invite those people to make their business or their factory a community project. What is the benefit? Free electricity, free labor, free components, free wood, because one of the community projects is wood supply. Free glue, because our scientists will be making glue better than any glue you can buy. And free electricity and no rates and taxes, because we're not going to charge our people rates and taxes. So this factory is now making all this stuff for free. And in return, they keep 1/3 of what we create, and the other 2/3 goes to the community for the community projects. So every business, every factory, every farmer, everyone we have approached with this says, when can we start? There's no even a debate about, yeah, what about this? It's just like, wow, when can we start? So that's how ready we are. All the farmers around our town have already agreed to participate with us. We'll grow so much food, we'll create so much stuff, and if we don't have this, they will create a community project to make it. If we need bicycle spokes for bicycles, we must create a community project that makes bicycle spokes. So it just keeps growing and growing. And what does that then do to other factories and other technology companies that make supercomputers? They'll come to us and say, can we move our factory to your town? Because it's a benefit for them. So we become a magnet for expansion, for innovation, for technology. Cure for all disease? Of course we're going to cure all disease, because we're going to bring those crazy guys that know how to cure all disease. And we're going to do it in a hospital. Are we going to ask permission to cure all disease? Of course not. What do you think will happen when we cure the first multi-millionaire of cancer? What's going to happen? You know what's going to happen, right? Exactly. So it's up to us. Let's just go out there and do it. Stop asking permission. But we have to do it on a political level. You can't just do it on a grassroots community projects level, because that's when they send the men with guns to shut you down. But when you want it on a political level, everything changes. So this is why I inspire and suggest to all the countries around the world that have members, Ubuntu members, to find, somebody needs to stand up and do what I do. Stand up, go register the political party, and start pushing this thing. Because it's relentless. It never stops. Once you get involved in this, every day, 7 days a week, all day, all night, it never stops. But you know what? Every time I think about the outcome, it just energizes me and it puts a smile on my face. So that's what drives me. I didn't see any hands, so it was supposed to be a question and answer thing. But I realized that there was a lot of missing gaps, and I hope I filled in some of those missing gaps for you, and now I really have to go. Thank you, Steve.
Now, he was born in Czechoslovakia, living in Johannesburg, marketing, knowing the system, singing, learning about the sounds and frequency. Now his hometown, what a waterfallen Buffen in South Africa, in Zagreb today, tomorrow Pattaya, next weekend here in Munich, after that Colorado, and then he's going home to prepare for the local election. The least thing we can wish for him is to become a mayor and to start changing the world of Africa.